Okay, thank you. It's an honor to be speaking on this panel. And yeah, as time gets a little bit constrained towards the end of our session, I will try to keep it to 10 minutes to allow the last speaker on the panel to the same amount of time. And yes, I will share some thoughts about managing IP from a business perspective, sort of drilling a little bit deeper on RUPERT's very impressive introductory presentation. It's always inspiring and instructive and impressive to see how those huge companies have their IP strategies very fine-tuned, very well laid out, very comprehensive. And of course, I have nothing to add to RUPERT's presentation from a strategic point of view, so I'll try to go a little bit more down from the strategic level to the tactical level. So what tools and processes and approaches can you actually put into place for planning and executing a strategy or part of the strategies that he has laid out, and of course also take that down from the pinnacle of size and sophistication where Philip resides in terms of IP to smaller companies. How do smaller companies come up with an IP strategy, how they manage their intellectual property and create value for their business, because that's as we've heard several times throughout, a sort of a common thread throughout all the presentations, it's all about creating value with IP, unlocking the value with IP. And that starts with knowing what you own. So it really starts with very basic things of knowing what is in your own IP portfolio, or even better, creating the right IP assets from start, like companies as Philips are doing. And of course, it's not as easy as it may sound. A lot of studies have shown that the distribution of value in an IP portfolio is, according to a study from the European Patent Office, it's about 5% of all patents that have significant value, another 10% have some value, and the rest of the 85%, the remaining 85% are basically junk, almost worthless. So any given IP portfolio of any size, you will probably find something close to that distribution. And the picture is even more complicated by the fact that, as we've heard today, there are many ways that you can create value from IP, and value is also in the eye of the beholder. So where do we start? Let's start, yeah, this is just a conceptual approach of how you can approach an analysis of what you own versus what you need in terms of IP, because it's not only what you own, it's also what do you need from a business perspective, which type of IP. So you could segment that into 4 quadrants, where the one at the upper right and at the lower left, it's stuff that you either need and own, so you're fine, or IP that you don't need and don't own, you're fine too. But the other two are the more interesting ones, where you need IP to protect a certain business, to protect margins, but you don't have it. There you're at risk and you have to do something. And the other one, which I focus on a little bit more in this presentation, upper left quadrant, what if you have IP that you're actually not using? And that creates an opportunity for alternatively putting that IP to use. And one of the reasons why companies, although they try their best to create the IP they will need, end up with IP they own but they don't need is simply because of the timelines evolved. In most patent offices around the world these days, it takes something around 4 years from the filing of a patent to actually getting it granted. And of course, in 4 years, in many areas of technology today, the technology cycles are much faster, and the market reality might overtake even and make obsolete even the best IP strategy. So how do you keep track of what you own and where it's valued, what you can use it for? You want to keep some sort of information repository database where you map and score your IP assets on an ongoing basis. So typically, sophisticated companies categorize their IP assets according to different dimensions. They have their technology areas where they are active and map their patents to those technologies. Other mappings are, of course, mapping to your product lines. How relevant is a certain patent or patent family to a certain product line? Also qualitative scoring, how strong are the claims, how easy is it to detect, and so on. And of course, also type of use. Is it a patent that you could use offensively or defensively based on the value creation models that we've seen in Ruth's presentation? And an important thing is to do this activity continuously. So you really want to do an initial assessment. When you get a new invention disclosure from the R&D department, you will do a review anyway to decide, do we want to file a patent on this? But you also will want to revisit that and document all the findings when you get an office action, when it's time to make the decision about foreign filings, about the PCT, national phases, and so on. So this is definitely an ongoing process. And this is an example in the upper part of the slide of a scorecard, type of scorecard that companies have developed traditionally to rate patents or inventions when they start out according to commercial potential, growth potential, enforceability, and other questions. And of course, you don't want that to sit around somewhere in a paper file on a piece of paper. You want that information, scoring and mapping of your assets to the business in some sort of database where you can mine it and report on it and find this information and read trends from it. So if you have that information and you want to figure out, answer that initial question, where might we have technology and IP in our portfolio that we are not using, you could do a business analysis like this one. It's the classic Boston Consulting matrix that many of you know, where the four bubbles we have here represent different product lines of a company, and they are mapped according to the attractiveness of the respective market and to the market share of our company. And typically you might see a resulting graph like this, where in the lower right end, on the lower right side, the large orange bubble represents a mature business where you have a lot of market share. You might have been in that business for many years, but it's not that attractive anymore. There's not much growth, not high. The margins are not that high anymore. And you have a huge bubble that represents a huge IP portfolio sitting there. And then maybe, of course, because you have been active in this business for a long time, accumulated a large pile of IP. But it may even be that this bubble is still growing. You are still getting lots of patents from this mature business. That might be because the awareness among the inventors, among the R&D people, is higher in that traditional business, while on the upper left we have a more recent business where we think this is going to be key for our company in the future. So it has a very high attractiveness rating, but it has a relatively small IP bubble. So maybe it's not only because it's younger, because also it might be a software business where there's not so much IP awareness among the software developers. So you really have to act and train your R&D community to deliver invention disclosures and allow you to create the right IP. So yeah, that's of course the high-level picture. The reality is that today a lot of companies, probably the majority, especially smaller companies, the only tool they have for managing their IP is really an Excel sheet, a spreadsheet with a couple of patent numbers and titles. And that, of course, companies like Philips have totally different, very sophisticated, high-end systems, but that's the reality for many small companies. And of course, it's hard with an Excel spreadsheet to create visibility into the portfolio to make strategic decisions. So why is that the case? And I'm really trying to speed up to allow you enough time. I see it a little bit in the context of the evolution of software and business software in general. So it started out in IP in the 1990s. The first docketing systems came to market, and that was client-server technology, and those docketing systems were very much geared to the needs of law firms. It was very much about due date calculation, filling out forms. And in the 2000s, these systems evolved into enterprise IP management systems, sophisticated systems for companies like Philips that allow them to track all this information that we just talked about. And those were typically web-based, intranet-based systems. And the problem with those systems was simply that they were too expensive to install and to maintain and to configure for the majority of small companies. So they have been still using Excel spreadsheets. And now in the area of cloud computing, mobile computing, social software, I think we see a new generation of tools, and I just call it smart IP management here for lack of a better word. And obviously, I'm putting the product of our company, IPfolio, into this category, but it's of course not the only one. And so that's a new generation of tools that bring those capabilities that companies like Philips have had for years down to a broader market of smaller companies. And yes, I guess I really have to speed up and finish up here. There's a number of advantages, of course, of those systems as compared to the Excel sheet. You can really bring your portfolio to life. So this is the same data that we saw in the Excel spreadsheet, where it was just a list, just put into IPfolio, and you can start making a business analysis on which technologies are we covering with our patents, which countries are we covering, how are our filing trends evolving compared to other companies, and so on. And yeah, even this portfolio chart that I showed more as a conceptual tool in the first part of the presentation is something that you can actually get out of such a software in real time, ad hoc, by just pressing a button. So it's not an analysis you do once a year or every 5 years. You can actually monitor how is your IP aligning with your business and developing aligned with your business day by day, week by week, month by month. So if you want to learn more about the software, of course, I'll be happy to meet up with you at our little exhibition booth outside or talk to you during the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.